Good morning, everyone. This is Robert T. Green, CEO of Pre-Post Game, also known as a players up here to educate, empower, and protect the athletes and the family's best interests alone. Today is Wednesday, August the 5th, 2020. Um, I'm doing this live for some more unfortunate reasons that it seems like, even though there was not a plan to do one today, that it just don't stop. So there's a couple of things that, when this video is being done, simply because between the national airwaves and the local people who particularly don't know or understand or even have a concept of what a scholarship truly is, I feel like, my group, my company is obligated to actually speak as if we are your media source in certain areas to educate and empower and protect you further than we normally do. Because the misinformation right now for some of the powers that be, the institutions, if you will, to try to keep you in, if you will, marginalized or uneducated on your rights and what the realities are in college athletics is something that we cannot stand behind. So, based off this video, and again, we do these things for actual preservation and time stamping to understand sports is not a game, sports is all business. The behavior of universities, commissioners, administrators, and coaches working against the best interests in unison of the athlete is the same. I'm sorry. The behaviors of university commissioners, administrators, and coaches working against the best interests in unison of the same athlete they generate billions off of, with the cover the NCAA is actually standard operating procedure. This has been like this since the beginning of time. I talk about situations such as W.E. Du Bois, who led to the Brown versus Board of Education, that was essentially known or adopted in 1909. But Mr. Du Bois spoke out about equality and equal rights as of 1905. And I say this in my other videos that in February 1st, 1906, is when Leavenworth, Kansas, was the first prison that was put in place. And then literally March 31st, 1906, is when the NCAA became what it is known today. So the reality is, when you talk about education and you talk about freedom, you're talking about lack thereof, if you will. You had two institutions that now working side by side, depending on where you may fall at as an African American, to actually push you towards a system for unpaid, cheap labor, education that you truly was not getting, vilifying in many cases. That at the end of the day, the establishment was to say whether you were successful or not, and if you were able to move forward, you had to do it based off of their time frame and their expectations. When you make billions for one group while taking all the risks is not free or education. You have a history of institutions misdiagnosis, downplaying the medical injuries that the athletes suffered in your programs while offering peanuts and insurance policies. Exactly. So, each conference, in particular the Power Five, and again, I do have the record, so I actually do know, make in excess of $500 million a year. And that's going back in 2018, 500 million. So when people talk about the athletes making decisions and teams and what they are getting, not understanding the scholarship, particularly for African Americans and their families coming from a predominantly poor environment, the government pays these institutions, these 501c organizations, subsidies to be there. Also, when the shoe companies, apparel companies puts actual clothing on the backs of these actual athletes, and then it's seen on TV for free advertising and marketing, name, image, and likeness that literally was theirs and given to them by birth by their parent, but the parent and athlete signed a document not understanding they gave the rights back to the actual university, allowing everybody except for the actual athlete and the actual parent to benefit off of who they are and what they've become by generating billions for someone else. Trust the facts, not the process. So when you're making 500 excess of $500 million a year, when you're asking athletes to give up their best interest of taking a chance on making millions for their family in order to play in bowl games in exchange for memories, hat, T-shirts, aluminum rings, and cotton T-shirts, then again, you're telling us everything that we need to know about how you truly value us regarding equality and that standpoint, while you, the coaches, while you, the conferences, while you, the TV companies, receive bonuses in excess of millions and millions of dollars at a clip. Trust the facts, not the process. Then the same insurance policies that, again, that are individual based right, you're offering up to the kid that's actually peanuts, not understanding that what's in that actual document is not likely to ever pay out. For more information on how that actually works, contact us at prepostgame.com. Yet you knowingly bully them and making a decision that jeopardize their future potential earnings. This direct and explicit behavior causing depression, anxiety, self-doubt, mental health issues, etc. So we talk about schools such as Iowa, Texas Tech, CSU, Colorado State University, as of right now, Clemson, TCU, and so forth. They're not the only schools, and I said this before. At the end of the day, their voices will be heard, all of them, going forward. And if you think that systemic racism and oppression, basically the things I just mentioned earlier, is not part of the problem, then you don't understand college athletics. It's not about once the 1% make it to the pros that people saying, oh, these guys are spoiled, these guys are coddling, this, or that. It's the 99% that's generating billions of free labor that are being physically, mentally abused, put in positions that they don't feel like that they value or they're valued in life outside of what that game says. And these people that are hired at the highest level to actually oversee them, I key phrase oversee them, is now why athletes are doing what they do today to make sure that their voices will be heard. That's why players want third-party independent doctors, representation, and they're using their own platforms to speak. It's not just for COVID-19. Your independent investigation used to protect the institution, not the athlete. Trust the facts, not the process. The athlete and their family had enough and they're letting it be known. So just so you guys know again, if you want to really go piece by piece, talking about institutions of higher learning, institutions, and in the country we're talking about now, prison reform, you have a hierarchy, if you will, of a coach or a warden. You have the COs, correctional officers, the assistant coaches. You have the guys that if you talk about a snitch or the informants in college and sports. And then when the actual athletes speak out for their own best interest, you have a group of guys that set up there to basically dispute what they say. Trust the facts, not the process. Then when you get called out for you know what, you go hire someone, you pay them independently, as you say, you want the world to believe, to review things that they have no access to. So the answers that they truly are getting it from those that you put in place to give the answers back, the informers. Those are supposed to make the program look like they're intact and everything is all good. Same way then when it comes to the prison system, that literally, if you speak out on certain things, repercussions and things that will happen to you after the fact is why you don't speak out. This is why a company like mine, and particularly me as the players rep, just so you guys know, besides the group of ours that spoke out, the 8 or 9 guys and over 60 guys that spoken out regarding Iowa, why we would not send your African American sons to play for Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz, or the Iowa Hawkeyes. There are other people that reached out in private who did not want the bullying, harassment, and threats that go into their social media platforms. They didn't want to be treated such as the same way they were while they were playing under Chris Doyle, Kirk Ferentz, and Brian Ferentz. They wanted to express themselves and explain how hurt they were in this actual environment, but felt comfortable and felt like they got something off their chest that they couldn't once before. And myself in particular, for the most part, but our company as well, were glad to hear what they had to say and will continue to support those exact people, even the ones that haven't spoken out publicly. And again, any other athlete and family for that matter. So with that being said, we're going to create, because we continue to hear things on networks that are paying a lot of people who aren't qualified to speak on these actual real important issues that go against the actual athlete and family's best interest. We're working on and will complete an elite athlete parent podcast. And what that will consist of is parents of athletes that more than likely played in the Power 5, 4 or 5 stars. Some of them have sons that are in the National Football League, NBA, etc. And we're going to discuss the topics that we're discussing now on this stream. And we're going to basically educate and empower and protect those athletes and families going forward to know and understand. It's not going to be narrated. It's not going to be dictated. It's not going to be spun like the media like to do. And at the end of the day, for those same university coaches, while they hire their independent investigations to come up with answers that are not true, to not basically have their voices truly being heard, to pick and choose which person they want to speak to, which report they want to acknowledge. When you have a university such as University of Iowa and the longest tenured head coach, when his school was found that even the investigation he paid for, that it was racism and bullying, he immediately turns around and attacked the call an athlete a liar and his mother a liar, when in essence we know he is the liar. Trust the facts, not the process. We're not interested in acknowledging that this independent report that you had put out there is valid in any way, shape, or form. And what you're going to find out in this new day and era of college athletics is that the people that are going to make the final decisions on everybody's jobs and careers is going to be those that without them, you wouldn't have a job or a career. Trust the facts, not the process. I can say that without the actual athlete and the parent, there will be no players rep. There wouldn't be any pre-post game. I'm here because of them. I will remain here because of them, or I will not because of them. It will not be because of the institution. It will not be because of the media that you are paid a lot of money to protect these said institutions. Trust the facts, not the process. So for all the people again who don't continue to understand, I'm going to break this down in a simple term. Just take when I say pay the players, no pay, no play, for example. For all those that are saying right now that the players can't get paid, and we are united, and it's not just the Pac-12. When they want to talk about terms such as the Title IX group, it goes back to the actual point when you talk about WNBA. When you know, and it's all been admitted now, that the persons that generate all the revenue in college sports is the football and the basketball team, which is predominantly African American. So when you had universities cutting sports in all these different programs, and you keep talking about what a scholarship is, do you not understand the African American football players and basketball players are paying for the scholarship of the other sports while they and their families are not able to get paid in the quote unquote scholarship? Trust the facts, not the process. So what you really don't understand is that the majority of the African American athletes come from a poor economic standing. And their parents, because every single parent that's watching this video that is going to one day be in college athletics or been in college athletics know you've all filled out a financial aid form. The financial aid form is based off of what your actual salary is. And when most don't have any money, financial aid kicks in and pays a majority of that said scholarship. And then what's left over, the school is supposed to kick in. Oh, but one thing I forgot. The shoe companies, the apparel companies that pays these schools millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for these said athletes to wear these actual logos, to wear these actual brands. So once again, without those actual athletes, those brands, those logos would not get the airtime that they would get, and therefore the school would not get the money that they were solely getting. So once again, the university, the coaches did not give these athletes anything. These athletes have given them everything, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially. So when you talk about things even coming up with the name, image, and likeness, you got every university in the country. I see all you people out there right now putting out your offer letters. Have you not noticed those offer letters that they saying official offer letters are basically pictures of a student that you cannot see? See, there was a time ago where they actually used to show these players' faces and their images because that's how they did more recruiting. They would go in the other kids' living room and they would claim that they're the reason why this kid was developed. He's in the National Football League. But the reality is that kid could have went to any school and would end up in the same situation. Trust the facts, not the process. But at the same time, when they go into the living room and use that kid's name, image, and likeness, they're not cutting him a check. Even the ones that they asked to play in the bowl game. Take Jake Butt from Michigan, a projected first-round pick. He decided to play in the bowl game. He got hurt towards ACL. He fell to the fifth round. Fast forward to 3 years later, after year two, they draft Noah Fant in the first round, a tight end of the Denver Broncos. Where does that leave Jake Butt right now? If you don't understand the National Football League, it's not for long. And at the end of the day, you cannot get that money back. The University of Michigan are not writing Jake Butt a check for the money he lost for going out there and playing in a Capital One Orange Bowl. Nor would they ever do so. Now, when you talk about the insurance, ask about the insurance policy that he had and how did that cover the losses of his injury? The answer to that question is no. So every decision that you make should be informed, should be based off what goes into these situations, pertaining to the money that these schools basically collect and bring in because of these athletes to create so-called environments of look what they get. So you talk about education, but you spend $55 million at Clemson a couple years ago to put in golf courses and golf clubs and and nap rooms and bowling alleys and slides. And then you expect these athletes to transition to society with that so-called free education that you're giving them? Well, you fooling. Pay the players. No pay, no play. You could keep that slide. You can keep that golf course. Those players are not doing that. They spend the majority of their time going out there and practicing, putting their bodies on the line. And for all the so-called programs that's sitting there talking about you got the best interest for the actual athlete in mind, if you did, then you wouldn't be asking them to jeopardize everything for nothing. For all these different networks, show me the athlete that spent 4 years in a college and got the degree and is sitting there making 6, 7 figures doing something outside of athletics. You can't. It's a facade. It's not realistic. Systematic racism and oppression in college athletics is been around since the beginning of time. The only difference is now that the players speaking up for themselves and why they're speaking up for themselves and how are they doing that. Because at the end of the day, they know that the people that's supposedly tasked or promoted to show that they have their best interests in mind do not. And they're letting it be known so future athletes and parents don't make that same tragic mistake. Knowledge is power. Invest in yourself, not the industry. My name is Robert T. Green. I'm the CEO of Pre-Post Game, also known as a pleasure and educate, empower, protect the athlete and their family's best interests alone. But as I said before, stay tuned and look out for the Elite Athlete Parent Podcast video. We're going to have parents of well-known athletes. Pre-Post Game is fortunate to service athletes at every level. Youth level, high school level, college level, pro level, transitioning to retirement level. Pac-12, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Power 5, FCS. Trust the facts, not the process. You guys be well, be blessed. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.